Hello detectives and welcome to my video for September. This month I've mostly been hiding away and working really hard on a brand new project of mine. I'm about halfway through with it now and I can't tell you quite what it is yet, but I'm hoping that very soon I will be able to, and I think you're going to be really pleased. Of course, I've also just announced that my short story, The Case of the Drowned Pearl, is going to be one of the World Book Day 2020 12 official £1 titles. I am so thrilled to be on the list with so many fantastic authors who I really admire, and I know that in 2020 there will be something for everyone at World Book Day. Now, this month has been really quiet for me, but next month will be really busy. I'm going to be at the Cheltenham Festival, the Bath Festival. I'm going to be talking at Waterstones Piccadilly on the 15th of October. On the 19th of October, I will be in Northern Ireland in Belfast for a signing at Eason's. And on the 20th of October, I will be down in Dublin in Ireland to do a signing at Eason's there as well. So there are lots of opportunities for you to meet me next month. Check my website if you want to find out exactly what I'm doing and when, and have a look at places and times for all of those events. So that is what's next for me, and that is what I have just been doing this month. And now I'm going to talk to you about some of my very favourite books coming out this month, because it has been a fantastic month for new books. The first book I've chosen is Sophie Anderson's The Girl Who Speaks Bear. Now, I got an early proof of this book. You can tell because the beautiful finished cover has been hand stamped on here. These are Catherine Onesta's illustrations. The final cover has color a bit more like this, but this is pretty much what the book looks like, so you won't be able to miss it in stores. Now, you may know about Sophie's debut, which came out last year. It's called The House with Chicken Legs, and it's all about the Baba Yaga myth, about the witch who lives in a house with chicken legs that can get up and walk anywhere in the world. This is not exactly a sequel. This is a totally different story, but like The House with Chicken Legs, it's very interested in fairy tales, especially Eastern European fairy tales. Yanka, the main character of this book, is a girl who was discovered as a baby playing outside a bear's cave. She was taken by her foster mother, taken in, and now she lives at the edge of her village. But Yanka feels like she doesn't quite fit in. She's so much taller, so much bigger than the other children. She feels very uncomfortable, and she has these dreams, these memories of being a bear. One day, catastrophe strikes at the fair, the town's yearly fair, when suddenly Yanka grows bear legs. She is horrified. Her foster mother is horrified and is trying to work out what to do to get rid of these bear legs. But Yanka doesn't feel like she wants them gone. She feels like these legs might be a clue to part of her identity that she's never really thought about before. Could she be a bear? Is she a human? Where did she come from? The clues to Yanka's true parentage lie in the fairy tales that her foster mother and a traveling salesman who comes to visit her a lot have been telling her her whole life. And so Yanka has to go into the forest with her pet and some other animals and discover who she really is, where she really comes from, and how she fits into the human world and the animal world. This is the most gorgeously written book. Sophie's words are so lyrical and engaging. It's also a really fun, beautiful, fast-paced read. You will not want to put it down. I love all the fairy tales that are in this book. The chapters are mixed up with fairy tales that are the ones that Yanka got told, and you see how these fairy tales, these versions of the fairy tales you may know really well or you may have never heard before, how these fairy tales feed into the main story and into Yanka's life. And they do give clues to who she really is and where she is from. I loved The House with Chicken Legs, but I think I like The Girl Who Speaks Bear even more. I think it's an absolutely fantastic, unforgettable, beautifully written book. This book is perfect for anybody 8+ who loves fairy tales and myth and stories about talking animals and adventure stories and stories about people learning who they are and how they fit into the world around them. I loved reading this book, and I know that you will too. I think it's another fantastic book from Sophie, and I cannot wait to see what she writes next. The next book I've chosen this month is Max Kowalski Didn't Mean It by Susie Day. This is the story of Max Kowalski, who is always doing things wrong. He's always breaking things and forgetting things, not doing his homework, not coming to school on time. And everybody around him is just exasperated by him. All the adults in his life are so frustrated by him, and they think that he's just not being a very responsible person. But Max has a secret, and that is that he has to basically look after his little sisters. His mum isn't around anymore. His dad is a single parent, and his dad feels quite helpless himself. And so he leaves Max to be the man of the house. At the beginning of this book, his dad goes away and literally leaves Max to look after his three little sisters and himself. And Max is trying as hard as he can to live up to that and to be the man that his dad believes he is. But he realizes that it is really, really hard, and he keeps making mistakes. And finally, he decides the only thing to do is run away. So he takes his three little sisters and they run as far as they can, which is a tiny cabin in the middle of the Welsh mountains that his friend's family owns. And while they're there, Max uncovers the mystery of the golden dragon on the mountain. And while he's there, he realizes that actually maybe he doesn't need to be the strong, sensible man of the house. Actually, maybe he's just a kid. Maybe the adults around him aren't looking after him properly, and it's okay to have all of the uncomfortable, weird emotions like sorrow and confusion and fear that he hasn't been letting himself feel. This is a really beautifully written book. I love the way Susie writes families. I love the way Susie writes trouble and problems. I think she's a great, great writer, and I really enjoyed this book. This book is perfect for you if you like books about big, noisy, messy families, if you like books about kids on their own, struggling to get by, if you like books that are contemporary but have just a hint of magic to them, you will really enjoy this. I would say it's perfect for anyone 8+. The next book I've chosen is for slightly older readers, and it is Liz Hyder's Bearmouth. Now, once again, this is a proof copy, but I think it looks close enough to the finished book that you shouldn't be confused if you go and look for it in a bookstore. This book is like nothing else I have read this year, and that is saying a lot because I read a lot of books. I read a lot of young adult books, which is what this is, but I've never read anything quite like this. It is all written from the perspective of a kid called Newt who lives inside the Bearmouth mine, and that is what this image is, the very low struts of a mine shaft, a mine tunnel. And Newt only has the most vague recollections of not being in the mine. Newt's whole life is darkness and dankness. Newt just sort of accepts that that is what life is until a new miner turns up, a boy called Devlin. And Newt is really drawn to Devlin, really frightened of him, but really drawn to him at the same time. And Devlin has all of these new ideas that Newt has never heard before, ideas about freedom, ideas about the world outside the mine, and ideas about the rights of the children and the men who work in Bearmouth mine. And suddenly Newt discovers that they are in the middle of basically a revolution. The thing that makes this so interesting and so different is that it's all from Newt's point of view, and it's written as if it was being told to you by Newt. Now, Newt can't really spell very well. Newt's just learning how to write and read, and so all of the words are sort of spelled phonetically, spelled the way that Newt would say them, and it takes a bit of getting used to, but as soon as you do get used to it, you are just inside Newt's mind. You know exactly what Newt is thinking. You really feel what it is like to be Newt, trapped inside the dark, creepy, dank Bearmouth. And it is just a really genius concept. I would say give it a couple pages to bed in and you'll really, really get involved. The other interesting thing about this book is that it is a fantasy. It's set in another world. There never really was a Bearmouth, but it's really based on things that actually did happen to children and to adults during the Victorian era. When there was the big industrial revolution, when people needed a lot of coal, people were sent down the mines in these absolutely horrific conditions. They were often killed, they were often injured, and so Liz has drawn on real history to make up her sort of fantasy world, fancy dystopian world of Bearmouth, which I think is really, really clever and really interesting. I really enjoyed this book. As I say, it's very different to almost everything else out there now, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I love how it stands out. I love its message, and I love the way it's written. I think it's very, very clever. You'll really enjoy this, I think, if you are 12 plus, if you like dystopian novels, if you like novels about revolution, if you like novels about history that are slightly twisted, so it's not exactly the history of our world, but very connected to it. I think it's quite hard for me to give you a comparison title for Bearmouth because it is so very different, but I really enjoyed reading it, and I think that you will really enjoy it as well. The final book I've chosen is Sue Cheung's Chinglish. Now this again is a proof copy. The finished copies don't have all this writing on it. They have a big Doc Marten boot with a Chinese dragon embroidered onto it, but the cover is still red, so you should be able to find it pretty easily if you go looking for it in stores. Chinglish is the story of a girl called Jo who lives in Coventry in the 1980s with her big family, her 2 siblings and her parents and her grandparents, and they live above a Chinese takeaway that her parents run. Jo, like every teenager ever, hates her family, is embarrassed by them, and wishes they would all just go away. She dreams of becoming an artist, and so she's keeping this diary, which is basically the book, illustrating and writing in this diary about all of the terrible things her family are doing to embarrass her. Now, a lot of it is very funny. This is a very funny book to read. Sue Cheung has a really good way with words. A lot of the stuff she says is ridiculous, and you find yourself laughing out loud at the exploits of Jo and her family and her friends as Jo just tries to be a normal, cool teenager and all her family embarrass her. But there are also bits that are really hard to read and not funny at all. Jo, as one of the only Chinese kids at her school, and certainly the only Chinese kid whose parents own a Chinese takeaway, gets a lot of racial abuse, a lot of teasing and bullying. There's also some really sad bits about Jo's family because you come to realize that all is really not well in her family structure. There is something going on that is a lot more than just a normal, embarrassing family. There's some really hard, horrible things that Jo and her siblings are having to go through because of what is happening with her parents. But the dark edges of this story, I think, just serve to make it even more engaging. Basically, Jo is Sue Cheung, and Jo's family are a very thinly fictionalized portrayal of Sue Cheung's own family. So Sue is really writing from experience, and it really does show. You just desperately want Jo to succeed, but the nice thing about reading this book is no matter how hard it gets for Jo, you know that Sue has succeeded. You know that Sue is living the dream that Jo has, which is to become an artist and an author. So there is this really happy, wonderful end to what is sometimes quite a difficult to read, even though very fun to read book. I would say this is perfect for anyone who loves funny fiction like Tom Gates and Wimpy Kid but feels a bit too old for it, or who loves books like Geek Girl, who loves books about funny protagonists struggling with their annoying, difficult families. This book is going to be perfect for you. And this book is also really great because, as I know I've said on here before, there are not enough books at the moment about BAME main characters. BAME is Black and Minority Ethnic. There was a study done last year that said that of all the books published for children and young people in the UK, only 4% were about a BAME character. When you think that there are 33% of all the kids in the UK who are BAME, that is a terrible, terrible number. And of course, of that 4%, a much smaller percentage are about Asian kids and East Asian kids, even smaller than that. And of course, of that tiny percentage of stories about East Asian kids, there's an even smaller percentage, a tiny, tiny percentage of the authors of those books who are East Asian as well. And that is why it's really great that we have people like Sue telling their own stories, telling stories that are specific to them. And that's why it's so important to have a proper range of books written by a proper range of authors, because everybody has a really specific, unique experience that can still speak to every single person on the planet. So that is why I've picked Chinglish this month, and I would say it's perfect for anybody 12, 13 plus who loves funny books that pack a bit of an emotional punch as well. So that's what I've been doing this month. Those are my recommendations for September. I'll be back in October with loads more book recommendations, and also, I hope, with an announcement that I have been waiting to share with you for quite a long time. But until then, goodbye.